Whenever I've talked about the amateur films I made in the past as a kid, I often reference my Indiana Jones movies. I did a video on the no budget feature I made called The Woods, and I enjoy talking about how corny they were and talking about that developmental period in my filmmaking life when I was trying to learn and teach myself things and make movies with people I knew and somehow did it. I don't really know how. It was just a relentless drive to see some images that were in my brain translated to movies. But I've also referenced my actual first amateur feature called Phenomenon Field, which I made when I was 15 years old in 2003. The film ended up being about 70 minutes long, and the reason I've never talked that much about it was because most of the people in it were former Jehovah's Witnesses or are still Jehovah's Witnesses even to this day, and many of them don't want their images shown on the internet, and so to be respectful of them, I will obviously go with their wishes, and I'm not going to do that, but that's also one of the reasons why I never talked about the movie, because I figured it would be too hard to do, but I'll cut around it, it's fine, we'll figure it out. This movie was incredibly inspired by Field of Dreams, which to this day is one of my all-time favorite movies. I think Field of Dreams is a gorgeous movie with one of the best scores of all time by the late James Horner. It's a beautiful score that gives me goosebumps and tingles every time I listen to it. It was a score that was mostly electronic, but then at the end of the movie, had this grand orchestra introduced, which created this amazing, swelling, emotional feeling that most scores just don't accomplish. And part of it is because it starts very small, but builds to this grand orchestral finale, which really heightened the experience. But Field of Dreams, of course, is about a farmer played by Kevin Costner who gets a vision that if he builds a baseball field in the middle of his corn crops, the great shoeless Joe Jackson will be resurrected as a ghost and will be able to play baseball again. Of course, everyone thinks he's crazy until the right people see shoeless Joe Jackson on that field. But not everybody can see him. And so it's a movie about faith. It's a movie about throwing away your ambitions and diving into something creatively, even though a lot of people are telling you you're insane for doing so. So it's a film that a lot of artists relate to, but it's just a great movie in its own right. I love the film, and so naturally, as a young kid getting into filmmaking, the very first movie feature that I ever tried to make that I never finished was I actually tried to do a shot-for-shot recreation of Signs, M. Night Shyamalan's film that obviously inspired me to want to make movies. Of course, I tried a few scenes, and my friends and I, being 14 years old with a camcorder that cost $150 or whatever from a home shopping network, realized pretty quickly that it's impossible. So Phenomenon Field was my next attempt, and we actually finished it. The plot of Phenomenon Field is that there is a magical baseball diamond. And if you step foot on this baseball diamond and play baseball, no matter what your skill level is, you will be just as good as the greatest Major League Baseball players of our time. But you have to be playing on this magical field. And it doesn't work for everybody. Some characters in the film are not able to achieve the abilities the field gives to other people. There's a scene where this neighborhood kid wants to play with us, and he's amazed that we're all so great at baseball because he can't figure it out. The eventual reveal is that the field only gives abilities to those who are pure of heart. So I had to have my one neighborhood friend be like the kid who didn't have a pure heart in this movie. And I had to explain it to him, like, it's not going to work for you because you're a terrible person. And he was like, what do you mean I'm a terrible person? And he's like, I don't know. You're just not a good person. The field won't work for you. Making this movie was difficult. First off, the movie's, of course, really technically awful in just about every way. I mean, we're not actors. We're all playing ourselves. We're all just playing versions of ourselves with our real names. It was mostly just me setting up the camera on a tripod to an angle that I thought wasn't terrible, and then people just kind of stand in front of the camera and talk. There's nobody moving it. There's nobody operating it. There's not a lot of movement to the movie. As far as visual effects go, one of the things that I discovered in the film was that if you filmed something on a tripod and then had somebody walk into the frame, and then if I dissolved those two shots together, I could make that Field of Dreams shot where somebody looks like they're just fading into the shot. And we did that a few times because another one of the field's abilities is that it's able to bring back great baseball players of the past. I wonder where I got that idea from. And so my dad plays Babe Ruth in the film, which, I'd actually have no idea how I got him to do it, but he did it. So there's that at least. Since I was a Jehovah's Witness at the time, to plan this movie after the Kingdom Hall, the church, my friends and I would kind of get together probably in the coat room or outside the Kingdom Hall or in the back and just talk about the scene that we were going to do the next day. And it would mostly be me saying, you have to wear this jacket because you wore that jacket in the last scene because it was cold that day. And that's why you put on a jacket, even though it's not in the script as a jacket. So make sure you bring that fucking jacket. Of course, I didn't say fucking. And it was just that over and over again for an entire summer. And we somehow got the movie made. It's also the first time I ever explored a complex set of rules for a story. In the film, our characters realize that you can only play on the field 5 times. What happens after the 5th time, you might ask? Maybe we lose all of our abilities and we just go back to regular baseball players? No, you fucking die. That's right, if you play on Phenomenon Field more than 5 times, it will kill you. Stakes. I understood stakes. So we have this really emotional scene where I figure that out and my friend is going to play baseball on this field for the 5th time. And I actually had to have a scene where my guy counts how many times they've played on the field. And I have him just have this whole moment where they count out how many times they've all played. And you realize that one of our friends was going there and it's his 5th time. So it's like a race against time to get to the field before he throws this ball in the air and hits it. And of course he does. And he actually fucking dies. I killed my friend in the movie. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's quite entertaining all these years later. Without a doubt, the biggest challenge of making an amateur feature when you're 15 years old, besides the obvious things of you're still in school, some of your friends who are a couple years older than you in the movie have a job, and so they have to balance that, and they're still in school, not having any money. We also only had one baseball, and so sometimes we had to get it to land in just the right spot, which obviously was very difficult. We were constantly hitting this damn thing and then having to go run and get it wherever it was and reset to do another shot. That made the entire process insanely long, and I remember while I was doing it, I realized why more than likely professional sports films have a bounteous amount of things like baseballs, because that would really shorten things. Props, costumes, you're filming in a public place. We would go to the field quite often, and there would be people already playing a baseball game there, and you just kind of have to wait for them to fucking leave. Or people would start to gawk at you and sit in the bleachers and ask you what you're doing, and you're trying to get a goddamn shot. All of that happens, and you're only 15 years old, and you're not really thinking about the fact that the story doesn't make sense, that there's a field in the middle of this park where apparently anybody can just walk onto it, and if you play more than 5 times and you have a pure heart, you'll just fucking die. You'd think a lot of people would be dying on this magical field, but at the same time, the story kind of has this hidden get out of jail free card where you can only play on it if you're pure of heart, and for everyone else it just feels like a normal baseball field. So apparently us Jehovah's Witness kids were the only pure of heart people, which actually makes sense that I would have thought that when I was 15. Being raised a Jehovah's Witness, you're kind of told that everyone else is worldly and you're better than them and you have a hope that they don't have and you're supposed to feel sorry for them. And so it makes sense that a 15-year-old indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness would make a movie where only their select group of friends was able to experience some kind of magical thing where everyone else didn't know what it was. But I can still remember the first times actually showing the movie to people, and I remember thinking, wow, there's some really boring parts. Because you can feel that when you first show it to an audience of any kind. You can feel where the boring parts are. Because you can stare at something on the computer screen for a really long time, and you can kind of convince yourself that something is working when you're alone. And then when you get 5 people or 10 people in a room and you're watching them watch it, you can feel when it drags. And even as a 15-year-old, I felt when it dragged. There were things I was proud of. I mean, I didn't have the concept of high definition or anything like that in my head. So the fact that we even had a movie that was shot on tape, it was the best it was going to look for us at that time with what we had at our disposal. So at least that felt cool to me. It had actual opening titles in it because I had figured out what iMovie was, and the movie was actually edited together. It wasn't like we were holding up index cards and, like cutting in camera. So at least that felt like I could present it to my family that had no idea what I was doing running out with a camera every day. And at the very least, they could see that I had figured that out. So there was some confidence built in that, and I kind of learned a lot as I went forward making the Indiana Jones movies and stuff afterwards. And I especially learned about what's stupid in the story, what not to do in the future, how to move past certain ideas that just don't work, and to think really heavily about plot holes and try to get those out of your story. And it was a great learning experience. I mean, I look back on the movie now and I just kind of smile because it's horrendously bad, but I mean, I was a 15-year-old. I'm not going to like sit here and make fun of myself because most 15-year-olds don't have an amateur feature made. But I did, and so I feel good about that. Even though it's terrible, I learned a lot while doing it, and I applied that to more movies in the future. So making the film was a life-altering experience because I learned so much while doing it, but I also was able to kind of prove to myself that I could do it. As soon as I finished my first amateur feature, I realized, okay, I did that. That was hard, but I want to do it again. It didn't scratch the itch. It wasn't just a phase that went away. I wanted to keep going, even though it was incredibly difficult and I had to convince everyone, because I didn't have a license at the time either. So I had to convince my parents to drive me back and forth to locations, which they did, which I appreciate to this day. And all of those things still made me want to do it again. So that to me was like, okay, yes, not only do I know what I want to do, but I just did a very low rent amateur version of it, and I still want to do it even though it felt impossibly hard. And that to me was confirmation that I had truly discovered my passion. So yeah, Phenomenon Field is a terrible movie that a 15-year-old made in Ohio, but I'm glad I made it, and it taught me quite a bit about filmmaking. So I'm curious for any of the other aspiring filmmakers who watch me, did you guys ever try to make an amateur feature when you were younger? Did you succeed? How far did you get? And I just want to hear those stories. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching, but I also want to give a big thank you to the sponsor for this video, Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Squarespace has member areas. You can connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content, manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights, all in one easy-to-use platform. It also has portfolios and galleries. You can present your work using Squarespace's professional portfolio designs, display projects in customizable galleries, and add password-protected pages to share private work with clients. And there's video blocks. You can present your videos from YouTube, Vimeo, and Animoto on your Squarespace site. You can add an image overlay to your video to improve your website's load speed by waiting to embed video players until playback starts. Or domains. You can buy a domain from Squarespace, and it's simple because there are no hidden fees or price hikes. Each domain comes with an ad-free parking page and free WHOIS privacy on eligible domains. Squarespace sells over 200 top-level domains so you can find the perfect name for your website. Choose a URL that ends in .com, .net, .org, or even get more specific with one like .art. So check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, please go to squarespace.com/Chris Stuckmann for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thank you guys so much as always for watching. Look forward to more videos very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.